Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our webinar. This webinar is going to be on Power BI for Dynamics 365. So we've got 45 minutes. There's going to be a bit of an introduction by myself, then I'll hand over to James Glover, who's head of our solutions architecture. Just by way of housekeeping, everybody is on mute. It's great to see so many people actually have registered for this. So there's a huge amount of interest in Power BI. We've got a mixture of organizations that already use Dynamics 365 and organizations that don't. So mixture of clients and prospects. If you have any questions, please use the question panel within the GoToWebinar screen. I'll be watching that, looking out for that for questions, and at the appropriate time, I will nudge or ask James to either go over something again or ask the question if I can't answer it in the chat. So that's really all there is. There's no big introduction into who Mhance are or anything like that. So we're really going to be just concentrating on a couple of slides, and then we will go into the product. So James, next slide, please. You could drive that. I think the majority of people already know what Power BI is. It's been around for a very long time. It's a cloud-based, ultimately this is what it is. It's a Power BI is a cloud-based business intelligence tool by Microsoft. So in terms of where it sits in the Magic Quadrant, for example, if you're looking at Gartner, it's very much the top right. A lot of organizations are really embracing this, and specifically for charities where the licensing is quite minimal. So, you know, for professional license, it's £2.30 per user per month. And James will show you really what you do get for your money. So what does it actually do? So it consolidates data from multiple sources into one platform. So whilst I suppose today, you know, we're predominantly looking at, you know, Power BI for CRM, this can actually also pull data from spreadsheets, from your finance system, from many different databases, different sources into one solution. So that's really what a business intelligence solution is. It's not just looking at the CRM data, multiple data. And I think, you know, what James will cover at the beginning of the demonstration is, where would you as a Dynamics 365 user use Power BI as opposed to Dynamics dashboards or views or whatever? You know, where is that limitation? And one of them is that it does consolidate from multiple sources. So I'm sure everyone's seen some wonderful, you know, powerful visualizations that Power BI can give you, and these are, I think the important thing is that this is really easy for end users. So in terms of the different charts and graphs, and you can have, you know, really good graphics, such as, you know, one of the demonstrations I saw recently was that they had fish swimming across the screen, and depending on the size of the fish, they depended on the value. So you can really make these I suppose interactive with a whole load of graphics as well. So it doesn't have to just be, you know, graphs and charts. It can be a whole array of different tools or images to display, you know, the value of the data or the quantity of the data or what it may be. So I think one of the reasons why people do like Power BI is because you can understand data a lot more visually in graphs and charts and even swimming fish. So in terms of, you know, really what we're also going to be showing you today is something called, you know, NFP 365 Power BI report. And the reason we've built this templated report is that, you know, when we demonstrate Dynamics 365, we do lean on Power BI as one of the main reporting tools, I suppose. And yet when we do, you know, engage with organizations of a whole variety of sizes, they don't necessarily have the skills or the time, perhaps, to build a whole suite of reports. So in terms of what we've done, so we've created a pack that sits within, you know, or pulls data from NFP 365. So those tables and those relationships are all there. And I think that that's really important. So it gives you a starter for 10. It's not going to be perfect for your charity, your organization, but it will enable you to start with something and be able to modify it as you move forward and want more out of the reporting pack. I think the other good thing is that, you know, once you've got these Power BI reports, you know, you can embed these into Dynamics 365, so into your CRM screens. You know, as a user, they don't have to go off to a different web browser or a different platform to look at this data. You can pull that directly into, you know, those Dynamics screens, and James will show you that. But it also means that you can easily, you know, have the reports, you can, save them as PDFs and then send them directly to trustees, for example. It also means that you can share reports, with people who don't have Dynamics 365. So if there are managers of other teams, for example, or finance want to have a look at, data from CRM, that's all possible. So, really having that strategy of a BI tool, throughout the whole organization is really powerful. So what I'm going to do now is hand over to James. And just as I said, there's so many on this call as well, with lots of different experiences, knowledge of Power BI. So, we'll start from sort of really basic, and then we'll go through to a bit more complex reporting. So over to you, James.
Thank you, Tori. Yeah, so let's kind of start with kind of positioning Power BI and where it should and shouldn't be used in a Dynamics capacity, and then kind of move on from there. So what I'm going to do is, let's just start in CRM, because obviously native Dynamics 365 does have dashboarding, does have reporting, but those dashboards, those reports are very much best described as in the now things, as in what's happening at this moment in time. There's physical limits on these reports in terms of the number of records they can analyze. So for example, we can't manipulate more than 50,000 rows in a dashboard. So, but if you want to know how many open cases I've got or how many people have called in this month, and you want to not navigate away from the platform, CRM dashboards are perfectly applicable. But there's nothing to stop us utilizing other dashboards directly within here. So if I go to income overview, for example, I can just be showing Power BI. So it's working out what you need to see as an organization. So one dashboard, as in what have I got to do, what's outstanding this month, is perfectly fine in Dynamics 365. But if I want big data of how am I doing year on year, monthly spend, comparing this year to last year, that's where Power BI comes in. But before we get to any of that, we need to bear in mind that standard Dynamics 365, for some users, dashboards, Power BI, is all a little bit too much. And actually, classic Excel reporting might fit a series of use cases for most organizations. So what I mean by that is, if I just went into my opportunities, for example, there's nothing to stop me if I have a look at everything in the whole database. For certain use cases where you don't need to do heavy analytics and you want to give the power of tools people have previously used to those individuals, there's still very much a use case for just playing with that data in Excel online or building an Excel template. So for example here, if I want to build myself a template with a bunch of pivot charts in, most users within your organization will have a level of Excel skill where they could build a nice, wait for this to load up, could build a nice template with a series of pivot charts with conditional formatting. So it doesn't always have to be turn left and go straight to Power BI. There are other tool sets we can use before we get to the data volumes required to make Power BI really sing. So it's just to understand those different scenarios is think about the data volumes and the use case. If I just want to do very quick ad hoc analytics, there is a use case for using Excel. And towards the end of this webinar today, I'll turn it on its head and actually have Excel consuming Power BI data, which is kind of an interesting twist on it all. But let's kind of go into different ways we can consume Power BI before we really get into the product. So first off, as before, you saw I was in CRM, I had a dashboard, yeah? And one of those dashboards could be Power BI. But Power BI can be surfaced in lots and lots of different places within your organization to make sure people always have that data available to them. So for example, if I went into Microsoft Teams and just had a look in my Teams estate, sorry, it's just logged me out of Teams just because it felt like doing so. There you go. So if I go to my event team, there's nothing to stop me. Was it my event team? Bear with me. Yeah, there's nothing to stop me having a tab for my Power BI report. So the whole point is we can embed Power BI in lots and lots of places to make sure end users are always finding that data. and I could even have Power BI as its own tile. So we could always embed it no matter where we are, whether you're in CRM, Business Central, Teams. There's always that option of just having Power BI kind of front and center to consume it. We've also got Power BI as a mobile phone app. So if we wanted to look at reports on the go, it's there as well. So there's lots of different ways we can get into this data set and kind of see that information. But let's actually go into Power BI itself now and kind of look at how we could potentially utilize just some of the native reporting within here. So I'm going to go into Power BI Web and have a look at some of these. So let me just get into a workspace that's got a bit of data in. Let's go to my one of my workspaces. And first we'll describe what a workspace is, and then we'll kind of go into a report. So architecturally, Power BI has moved on quite a lot. It kind of started out as an ad hoc reporting tool that people used to build reports in and share. Now we've got a far more governance, far more control of how we police who can see what and do what. And it gives you a lot more usability because of it. So what I mean by that is the best way to utilize Power BI is effectively to create workspaces for different teams within your organization and partition out who gets to see what data. So for example, I've got my main CRM system here. I might have an events team one. And by utilizing that, it means we always have a much cleaner interface because everything's controlled by security. There's nothing worse in a Power BI deployment is everybody publishing reports as themselves and then everybody sharing those reports with everybody, because it's great for the first month, everybody loves the reports. By month 2, nobody can find anything. So always have that a governance layer when you're starting to work with Power BI of defining some workspaces based on job role and making sure the relevant security is set on those workspaces. My personal preference is to allow teams to create workspaces. So when you're added to like the major donor team in Teams or the fundraising team, you'll automatically get access to those Power BI reports. So there's no additional admin, but that's the first thing to bear in mind because stuff happens, staff leave. You don't want reports owned by staff members where effectively my workspace up here is the equivalent of saving reports on my desktop and then hoping other people see it when I leave. So it's not the best place to do it. So it's all around defining the structure of how you want people to see this data, where you want that data to be. But let's kind of go into report and talk about some of the functionality. So I'm going to open a reporting pack and just talk through some of the functionality we've got within here. So here's my report. It's quite a large report, this one, with effectively lots and lots of tabs of information. So I happen to be on the campaign tab, but I could be on the contact tab. And it's how we're doing it, it's how we're looking at this data. So effectively, it's one report, one data model with lots of different ways of viewing that information. And again, as we're looking at this, you'll notice, as I was in Teams before, I've got teams within here. So what I mean by that is if I'm on my volunteering dashboard and I suddenly notice a big drop off in volunteers for this particular year, there's nothing to stop me having a chat about this report in context of where I am. So what I mean by that is I could add it to a channel, I could add it to a chat, and I could actually have a conversation with somebody about these reporting numbers where the report is in the conversation. So it's not just like, I've got some data over here, what do I do with it? You can bring that alive by having a conversation with people about it. We can also, as an author, I can also have a chat internally about it, and I could actually have conversations with the people developing the report saying, could you change this, could you change that? Again, lots of different ways you can interact with the data within here. Other things as well, whilst I'm in this UI, before we dip into any form of reporting design, is some people like old school, I want an email once a week with my reports in. And this is now available because we've got the subscribe option here. So at any point, I could add a subscription and say how often I want that report link to be sent to me with an image all the way through. So that's really quite powerful of having that, maybe which page do I want? Actually, I want the donor attrition report and I want it weekly. So being able to do that and have it automatically sent to my mailbox is a quite powerful tool for people who don't want to remember to go in and look at the numbers. So we can do that even if you create an exception report of things that look wrong. It gives us that level of flexibility of having subscribers, having people get that data, and a way of seeing that information. And then finally, so that's me looking at all of this and subscribing to it and maybe chatting about it in Teams, but we don't have to stay within the Power BI world. At any moment in time, if I want to, I can also export my Power BI to various other sources. So if you're doing board reporting or trustee reporting, or maybe you're having to do a reporting pack for major donors, in this particular context here, I can build my report and in a single click generate a complete PowerPoint deck with all the associated charts in a multi-tabbed format or even a PDF. And that's the key thing here. We've got all this flexibility to give different people the ability to consume this data. They don't all have to have a Power BI license, and they can just have the reports, static versions of the report, physically emailed to them. But on the topic of licensing, what we can also do nowadays as well is there's nothing to stop us if you've got a series of trustees that aren't a member of your organisation, or maybe outside accountants who aren't a member of your organisation. There's nothing to stop us sharing this report with third parties and gifting them a Power BI license. So we've always got that flexibility as well, being able to invite people into the organisation and give them selected access to certain reports to consume that data. So let's look at Power BI in general now in terms of how we can do this, how we can build these, and the level of flexibility we've got. So when we build a report, we start in a tool called Power BI Desktop and then publish to Power BI Web, which is what we're in today. So I'm going to open up Power BI Desktop and kind of walk through some of the options we've got here in terms of consuming data from various sources, and then kind of show it in action within the main UI, if that's okay. So I'm going to open my Power BI Web, and I've already opened a bunch of reports. And what I want to do is kind of show you the data modeling, how we do all of this. Yeah. So if it will let me scroll. So it's over here. So effectively, we can define all of our tables, where we want to get them from, and build a complete data model. So Power BI, the best way to conceptually think about it is it's a separate database we're populating from many sources and then rebuilding those relationships. So at any point, when I do get data, I could pick data from lots and lots of different places. So if I do more, for example, I should get every single source here. So one Power BI report, I did click more, didn't I? He'll come up in a minute. There you go. So one Power BI report could be data from 10 different systems. And the Power BI is the glue in the middle. It does not need to be this big central data warehouse where you've done all of this complex work to join it all together. Power BI is the method of joining this data. And that's the really powerful bit. If you've got maybe Great Plains on one side or Business Central, maybe a bit of Dynamics, maybe a bit of Salesforce, Power BI can give you a single view of the world, unioning all of those data sets together as we're building the report. So for example, in here, I've got everything from ParQ to a bit of IBM, DB2, a bit of AS400 stuff, Google, Snowflake, everything in Azure has an API connector, all of my Salesforce objects. We can talk to pretty much anything, and the list goes on and on and on. So all of these are pre-built connectors of places we can consume data from. And even if it's not in the list, if I just type in REST, for example, sorry, OData it's called in here, isn't it? I can always just pull in data straight from a web feed. So if there's anything that's got modern architectural web services behind it, we could consume into Power BI. I've just noticed the question mark popped up in my chat. Sorry, I was popping on the other window.
Yeah, I was just it's about licenses.
It was about licensing, okay. So yeah, so it gives us that ability of no matter where the data's coming from to pull it in. And that's a really, really nice thing. So, for example, in this report, I've got a combination of SQL Server and Dynamics 365 and Excel. Some of it was like a Excel table saying who works for who. I've got a SQL report of historic case activities, and I've got all of the rest of the data coming in from CRM. But having that level of flexibility means we can just unit it all together in one single view. So we do this, that gives us our data model, that gives us all of our data of where it's coming from. The next thing we can do is we can take all of our data, just pick an innocuous table like stuff, there we go. You can pick all of our data, and then we can do lots and lots of additional logic in here. And what I mean by that is I can then create my own calculations, create my own logic, but in a far more robust way. So just like when you're in Excel and you're writing a formula to say if this then do that, or I want to divide this by that and look up this value, think of it as just like a really robust version of Excel with a lot more flexibility, but the ability to read off any table, any data source. So if I wanted to suddenly work out average open times, I could write an average formula. So I'm just going to quickly do here, I'm just going to create a new column, just as an example. And as I do a new column, I've got a complete formula with all of my syntax available to me. And this in here, so for example, if I do like date diff, it's going to give me all my functions in here. Yeah. Average X, all cases, and we can build this, we can work the logic out. And the nice thing now is this language, which is effectively Power Query, is common across all of Microsoft's ecosystem. So if you're doing data factories, if you're doing data flows, if you're doing any work in Azure Synapse or analyzing data, or even if you start using the new PowerFX language, they've tried to unify it. So once you've got the skill set of understanding this style of work, you can use it over lots and lots of different platforms. But it gives us that flexibility of being able to take data, play with it, turn it on its head, and all those sort of good things. So I won't change this data model just for today, but it gives you that level of flexibility. Yeah, it means we can manipulate data, we can play with data. So we can all do all these kind of wonderful things. I can turn it around, I can transpose it. So we can take that source and effectively manipulate that data out. But let's kind of go into Power BI because I don't want to save that particular one. I kind of walk through the sorts of things we can do within here. So I'm just going to come in here and actually let me just go to my events one, a nice simple one. Let's edit it to give you an idea of what we can and can't do. There we go. So I'm just going to edit this report directly in the web at this moment in time. And in here, you see I've got a very complex data model with lots and lots of different tables in. What this also means is at any point, I could add in new visuals, I could add in new logic, and it gives us the ability of, if we want to do something, it's all available to us. Maybe I want a chart, a graph, like a KPI box, even like scorecards. We've got all of these different options available to us to just drag on a page and pick our data. So very similar to Excel, but consuming data from lots and lots of different places. But the whole point of this is we also have a very large ecosystem of additional visuals. So if you were in the Excel world, you've got what you see is what you get. That's your way you can stylize it. As Tori said earlier on, was like swimming fish across the page. That's just an additional one we can get from AppSource. So everything now has a visual, and there's new visuals coming all the time. So if I want like to do like a Gantt chart of maybe program delivery we're doing, when we're doing it, what's happening, we can do that. We can just grab all of these free controls and make the reports nice. Yeah, I've got pretty much everything you can think of here. I'm pretty sure if I type it, do you want me to type in fish, Tori, just because I know you've got that. It's not even
you could do,
fish,
but I was just using that as an example.
Yeah, but it gives us that level of flexibility. Yeah, but back to governance. If you want to, if maybe you don't want the world's ugliest controls dragging on reports and people going a bit rogue, we can also lock it down and only have approved visuals. So your IT team could say, actually, you can use these 10 third parties, do what you want with them, but nothing else. So we've always got that level of governance because it's part of the Microsoft ecosystem. And that's the kind of nice thing. It gives us that ability of doing all these, even down to floor plans. There's everything in here as you scroll down in terms of doing that level of work. Yeah. But where this starts to get a little bit odd now is, so we've got Power BI, it's a reporting tool. Yeah. But Power BI becomes more than a reporting tool at this moment in time, because we can travel back into CRM or back into Power BI to do actions. So what I mean by that is, you'll notice one of my visuals here is Power Automate. Yeah. So I could actually run a flow to do something if I don't like the look of the data. I could have a Power App. So if I just type in Power Apps, Microsoft have a habit of spelling it differently each week. It'll be in here somewhere. No, it's because I've already installed it. Sorry, it's already there. So I could add my own Power App into a report to me to physically edit the data. So reporting stops being a read-only view of the world and actually becomes actually that data's wrong. I'll edit it in the report and it could be updating the primary source of that data. And that's the key thing here, it's all coming back around on ourselves now. And even down to, if we want to, at this particular moment in time, we could define criteria of when something doesn't look right. So what I mean by that is, maybe I've got a fundraising to target graph here. I'm looking at this, I'm looking at my actual funds to target funds. I've got within all of this, but at any moment in time, I could define goals, I could define metrics, and define triggers when something looks wrong. So the report could drive an action to happen in the business if the numbers drop below a certain threshold. And that's all done within Power Automate. So it's no longer just a read-only view. It is, here's my report, it's just refreshed. These numbers look wrong, I'd better tell somebody. And Power BI is doing the telling. So it's not a conscious decision of a user having to log in, find the report, find the blip. We can create those blips and monitor it and automatically warn people when the net numbers look wrong. So it's a proactive reporting tool as well as a static reporting tool. And that's the key thing. It's giving you that level of flexibility to kind of go from being a reporting UX all the way through to being a proactive monitoring of what's going on. And that's the kind of the really nice things in here. It gives us that ability. But obviously I'm looking at the reports at the moment. What happens if I want a different version of this report for myself? Maybe I want to kind of do something fancy. Maybe I kind of, let me just go out of edit mode a minute. Just don't want to save, do I? Let me just navigate away. I don't want to save what I'm doing at the moment. Just go back in.
Just a quick question, James, while you're finding that. Just question, is there a limit on the data? So if you've got, I suppose, millions of contacts or whatever, is there a limit of, and will it affect speed at all?
So there are some
performance.
There are some architectural performance considerations you need to do. So there's no theoretical limit on data, but you need to be careful how you architect stuff going forward. So what I mean by that is, within any reporting tool, if you're not being careful and sensible with what you select, you can create quite a beast. So a classic example, I've got a tab here for contact report. In my particular system, that contact table has about 720 fields. So it's a very, very wide table. You would never need 720 fields exposed into your data model. So it's all around making sure you are only pulling back the data fields that are required across the tables that are required. So you can go from a very lumpy report that's not particularly performant to one that's very highly optimized. So ad hoc, small level reporting, you can be a little bit lazy. You can just grab all the data. It doesn't really matter. But when you get into income processing or high volume accounting, you need to have that level of governance of actually thinking which fields from which tables do I want, and be a little bit more selective when you're building that initial data model. But that's part of our consultancy offer, is we prefer to consult in what to pick and how to pick it, and then let you then build reports and build the nice sizzle at the end, because that's where you just get the added benefit. You need to understand what you should and shouldn't do. And on that
Great.
topic,
And just another,
sorry,
just one other question, James, is just how it would work with Azure Synapse, or if you've got a data warehouse.
Yes. So just for your information, Power BI and Synapse is the same underlying data structure. So going a bit geeky on it, I just do apologise, but the way Power BI secretly stores all of its data is in a data lake the same as Synapse. So it just so happens that if you create a brand new data warehouse on Azure Synapse, it's the same data storage model. So our personal recommendation is, as soon as we get into big data, 10 million rows plus, we would always recommend using Azure Synapse as your primary source and have Power BI consuming data from Synapse rather than CRM, because then we're effectively having an offline reporting database. So just like the good old days when you were on premise and you used to take a replica of your live database to a second SQL server to do reporting on, that's the best way to think of Azure Synapse. It's a real-time replica of your live system where you're not going to hit any performance issues or slow down that environment. Because just like with anything, if we are reading from that primary source system, at the point of reading lots of data, we could be impacting other users. So Synapse is a really good source in the middle of holding that in kind of a pseudo data warehouse to make sure we're not affecting performance of your production system, and also giving Power BI a reporting boost in its own right. So that's the best way to really architect it.
Thanks, James.
Okay. So
lost your flow now.
So finally onto this. So if I don't particularly like this report and I want to look at different reports, there's nothing to stop me creating my own report based on what other people have done before me. Maybe I want my contacts by source location, but don't like the rest of this page. There's nothing to stop me pinning that visual onto my own dashboard. So I could say a new dashboard, and I could call it Self Special in the morning. There you go. So I could create a brand new dashboard called James's Special Dashboard, and I could say, actually, I want a bit of that one. Maybe I want to go to case management. Maybe I want to know my resolve cases. I could pin that to that same dashboard. So I could hit my pin. I could then pick my James's Special Dashboard, and I could build. Let me go another one. Let's do opportunities now. Let's look at my opportunities expected close date. Again, I could pin that, stick it on my same dashboard again. At this point now, if I open that dashboard, I've got complete control. So I've now got just what I want to see. And then I can always drive back into it. Let me just go back to a second, I didn't mean to click. But then I could I want that one to be that shape. I want this to be a different shape. And again, you can just drag and drop and play with this data. And so as long as you've built a good reporting model with a good level of analytical reporting and charts, users can then self-update, build their own dashboards, subscribe to the dashboards. And even now, I've built a dashboard. Here's my three things, sorry. But then I could subscribe to my 3 things. So you could define what you need to see, what is really important for you as a person, build that dashboard from everything that's been gone before, and then subscribe and have it emailed to you on a weekly basis. So again, really powerful in that context. But what I want to do is just finally finish on taking that Power BI data and actually using it in other reporting tools. So every time you do something like this, you're effectively building a data model. You're building a repository of data people could use. So 10 years ago, everybody was building kind of OLAP cubes and cubes to consume and really do high-level interrogation of a database. Now, every Power BI data model you build is effectively available to use in Excel and in other tools. And what I mean by that is, if I just open up Excel on my computer, I'll just walk through the sort of options we have here, because it's a really interesting options. If I open a brand new blank workplace, in Excel, I have no data, yeah? At this moment in time, because we have Power BI, we have Excel, it's all part of Office 365. If I go to my data tab here and do get data, it knows I'm a member of Enhance. So it knows it can find any data that's been modeled for me as a business. So if I click on this one, I'll then get all of my Power BI data sets. And it's not just that, I can also certify data sets. So I've got all sorts of data sets here, but my top two, I've certified one and I've promoted one. So what that means is I have took my data set and I'm telling the rest of the business, if you want to do any reporting whatsoever, use that certified data set, because everything in that data is trusted. So if I pick that certified data set, I've got access to all of our reporting analytics of all of our support cases, all the tables, all the fields from a known source. So I've got all that data I previously had open, all of my fields. I don't need to worry about where it's come from. I don't care about any of that anymore, because I've certified that data set. So anybody writing any report in Excel, it's automatically going to refresh with that data set as that data set moves forward. So you can give the report, you can give those power users their reporting skills back again by having these data sets that you've built once in Power BI, meant anybody can consume against. So it kind of turns it all back to being, I'm a power user in Excel, but with data that they don't need to worry about how to connect to it, where it's coming from. So this data set could be 6 different databases, but they don't need to know that. All they need to worry about is, here's my company data, I can build any report. Right, and I think that's me for today, Tori, because we've obviously covered a lot of ground there.
Yeah, just one quick one. So we can ingest data, just to confirm, we can ingest data from Oracle databases, on-premise databases. What about AWS, James?
There are a couple of AWS connectors. AWS is a bit like Azure. It's got so many thousands of services now. I couldn't guarantee some of the newer ones, but the existing ones, yes, there's definitely connectors for. So Snowflake and AWS and some of the other data warehousing tools, yes, we can ingest and connect from.
Okay, another one is, I've heard of a Power BI API. What is it for, if one exists?
So there is an API to refresh and publish data. And ironically, that API is actually exposed to be a Power Automate. So this is the whole point of being within one large ecosystem. In theory, I could have a flow job in CRM that tells Power BI to refresh the data. So that API is quite powerful to poke directly and also call from Power Automate.
Brilliant. Thank you, James. Let's flip back to the slides. That'd be great. Brilliant. So just I suppose just a bit of a wrap up here. We talk a lot about data, and we did a webinar a month or so ago about understanding your data and the importance of data. And I think this summary slide just pulls together that a lot of charities are used to having loads of data, and nobody ever wants to get rid of any data when migrating even from old systems, but it's actually understanding the data better, so that you can, I suppose, act on it and improve your services and improve the causes that you have. So in terms of Power BI, it's really a easy to use solution, and with a bit of training that we can provide, you can get really up to speed on Power BI and these reports really easily. I think just one thing is as well is that when you're looking at the data, and we all know that data is key, it's making sure that everybody has access to it internally and externally, and in the right format as well. And just the final bullet point there is that all data not needs to be in one system. When we do engage with organizations, they sometimes want to bring all their data into Dynamics, and we're very much of the mind that if you are using best of breed systems such as First Class or grant tracking system or anything like that, then that's the best place for them. And with something like Power BI, you can pull that data across multiple sources to give you those visualizations and the reporting that you need. So just in terms of the next slide, just before we wrap up, We've been to, next slide, James.
Yeah, sorry, I was just answering the question. Sorry, I didn't have the mouse. There we go.
That's okay. So yeah, we're coming to the end of the year. We have for the customers on the call, we have a round table next Thursday. So this will be the last one of the year. It's going to be a bit fun. If you would like to attend, please register, because those that register and attend, that we're sending a surprise through the post for us all to enjoy during the meeting. There will be update from our CEO. We're going to be talking about Power Apps again, but we're also going to have a quiz as well. So this is something really just to wrap up the year, give you a bit of feedback on Enhance, new clients, new projects, and also our plans for next year. We're actually just putting together our list of webinars for next year with Jenny, our marketing manager. If there's anything you specifically would like to see more of, anything we may have missed this year, then please let us know. Feedback is really important to us. We're happy to put on webinars. We do loads of webinars, but we want to make sure that it's right for our clients as well. So if there's anything you specifically want to see or you think would be great for the sector, let us know. We've got 2 in-person events scheduled, which is great. Fingers crossed they all continue next year. So we'll be at the Charity Technology Conference, which is usually in November, but they've pushed this to March, and the Charity Finance Annual Conference in the summer, which does seem a long way off, but I'm sure we'll get there pretty quick. So that's all for today. Hopefully you've enjoyed the presentation. If you would like a recording to share for any colleagues that couldn't make it today, then please let us know. There'll be a quick survey at the end of this sent to you just for some feedback. If you've got any other questions or you'd like to talk more, please get in contact with your account manager or through the email address or the web form online. So thanks very much, James. Hope everybody has a good day, and hopefully see as many of you next week at our round table.